The string quartet was mid-phrase when the room changed. It did not shatter, it did not explode, it shifted. One by one, conversations thinned into murmurs. Laughter faded into awkward half-smiles. Glasses paused mid-air. Zariah felt it before she understood it. She stood near the center of the private rooftop lounge, overlooking the Han River, a soft champagne flute resting between her fingers. Her engagement ring caught the chandelier light, brilliant and new. Her fiancé, Park Min-jae, stood across the room speaking with her father and several investors. He looked proud, slightly flushed, overconfident. And then the doors at the entrance opened. 3 men stepped in first, then he followed. Tall, the dark suit fitting him with surgical precision. His face looked carved rather than formed, sharp lines, controlled mouth, eyes deep and impenetrable. Handsome in a way that felt dangerous. His expression offered no invitation. He did not scan the room like a man seeking approval. He entered like a man who already owned it. Whispers began. "Is that? It can't be." Zariah's pulse stuttered. She had seen his face before, in financial articles, in discreet whispers among elite business circles. Lee Hyun-woo, heir to one of Korea's most quietly powerful syndicates. A name spoken carefully. He did not look at her at first. He looked at Min-jae, and the air shifted again. Min-jae's face drained of color. Her stomach tightened. Hyun-woo approached with unhurried steps. Not aggressive, not theatrical, just inevitable. The quartet stopped playing. Zariah set her glass down carefully. Her heels clicked softly against marble as she stepped closer to her fiancé. "Min-jae," she murmured, low enough for only him to hear. "What is this?" He didn't look at her. He stared at Hyun-woo as though watching the arrival of something he had prayed would not come. Hyun-woo stopped a few feet away. Up close, he was worse. Calm, controlled. His gaze moved to Zariah then, not assessing her body, not lingering improperly, simply evaluating, measuring. "You have something of mine," Hyun-woo said to Min-jae. His voice was even, it carried without volume. Min-jae swallowed. The room was silent now. Zariah felt dozens of eyes on her back. I was going to handle it," Min-jae said. "When?" Hyun-woo asked. The question wasn't sharp, it was surgical. Zariah turned to Min-jae. "Handle what?" He flinched. That flinch told her everything before words did. Her father stepped forward. "Is there a misunderstanding?" Hyun-woo's gaze shifted politely to her father. No misunderstanding, merely unpaid debt. The word debt rippled through the room. Zariah stared at Min-jae. "What debt?" Min-jae's voice dropped. "Zariah, I didn't want you to worry." Her heart began to pound. "How much?" she demanded. Hyun-woo answered instead. "A considerable amount." Min-jae wiped at his forehead. "I was going to recover the losses, I just needed more time." "And you no longer have it," Hyun-woo replied. Her father turned sharply. "Min-jae." "What is he talking about?" Zariah's chest tightened. Min-jae finally looked at her, and she saw it. Fear. Not fear for her, fear for himself. "I had to leverage something," he said quietly. Her skin went cold. "Leverage what?" Silence stretched. And then he said it. "Our engagement." The words didn't make sense at first. She blinked. "What?" "I used the engagement as collateral," Min-jae rushed. "It was temporary. I just needed protection while I stabilized the investments." Zariah's hearing dulled. The rooftop blurred. "You used..." Her voice cracked, but she steadied it. "You used me?" Min-jae's jaw tightened. "I didn't have a choice." The humiliation struck like heat under her skin. Everyone was listening. "You chose to risk me," she said slowly, "instead of losing your assets." His silence confirmed it. Her heart broke. Her father staggered slightly. "I never agreed to..." Hyun-woo's gaze shifted again. "You co-signed the extension," Hyun-woo said. The words were precise. Her father went pale. "I thought it was routine paperwork." "It was not," Hyun-woo said calmly. Zariah's breath shortened. If her father had co-signed, that meant refusal meant bankruptcy. Years of work erased. She looked at Min-jae again. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "You were going to tell me?" she asked. "I was going to fix it," he insisted. "You gambled me." Her voice carried across the silent rooftop. She had never felt so exposed, so reduced. Hyun-woo watched her carefully. He did not interrupt. He simply waited. Min-jae's voice grew desperate. "Zariah, this is temporary. If we go through with the arrangement..." "What arrangement?" she snapped. Hyun-woo answered. "The collateral agreement transfers." "To what?" she demanded. "To me," Hyun-woo said. The simplicity of it was devastating. Her engagement party, her fiancé, her future, signed over like property. Anger replaced shock. She turned fully toward Hyun-woo now. "Do I get a say?" His gaze met hers. There was something there, not cruelty, not pity, recognition. "If you were not consulted," he said evenly, that was his failure. A flicker of tension passed between them. "And now?" she pressed. "Now," Hyun-woo said calmly, "you may decide whether your father keeps his company." The power shift was undeniable. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He stated reality. Her father whispered, "Zariah, I'm so sorry." She closed her eyes briefly. This was no longer about pride. It was about survival. Min-jae reached for her arm. "Please, just cooperate for now. We can fix it later." She pulled away. The touch disgusted her. "You chose to save yourself," she said quietly, "not me." He had no response. The silence condemned him. She turned back to Hyun-woo. "If I refuse, your father's holdings are liquidated within the week," calm, unemotional. She felt her world narrowing. Her engagement ring felt heavy. She slipped it off, placed it on a nearby tray. The sound of metal against glass was sharp. It was clear. She had no choice. "I'll go," Zariah said, anger burning her skin. Min-jae looked at her. "Zariah, I'm sorry." She didn't look at him. "You forfeited the right to say my name." Hyun-woo stepped slightly aside, offering her the path forward, not touching, not pulling, allowing. It was the first respect she'd been shown all night. Her father's eyes were wet. "I will fix this," she whispered to him. She didn't know how, but she would. She walked past her guests, past her humiliation, past the remnants of a life she thought she understood. Hyun-woo followed. The elevator doors closed. Silence enveloped them. Only then did her composure tremble. She stared straight ahead. "You humiliated me." "I did not," he said calmly. "Your fiancé did." The elevator descended, and with each floor she felt the weight of something irreversible settling over her life. When the doors opened, his driver was waiting. The city lights blurred as the car pulled away from the rooftop. Zariah did not cry. She did not collapse. But something inside her hardened. She would not be collateral. Not for long. 20 minutes later, they arrived at a towering structure of glass and steel, its upper floors disappearing into the night. The elevator rose so smoothly it felt unreal, like the city itself was holding its breath for him. Zariah stood near the back wall, arms folded tightly across her chest, as if her posture alone could keep her from falling apart. The mirrored interior reflected two versions of her, one composed, chin lifted, the other with eyes too bright, jaw clenched so hard it ached. Lee Hyun-woo didn't look at her. He watched the numbers climb with the detached focus of a man used to arriving at places no one else could access. The silence between them was not awkward. It was deliberate. Zariah finally broke it. "How long?" He glanced at her once. "You want details now." "I want everything now," she said. "You don't get to bring me out of my engagement party like a stolen purse and then decide when I'm allowed to understand what's happening." A faint pause, almost a reaction. Not anger. Something closer to interest. "You're not afraid," he observed. Zariah laughed once, sharp and humorless. "I'm terrified, but I'm not going to perform it for you." That earned her his full attention. The elevator chimed. The doors slid open to a private vestibule, quiet, hushed, and expensive in a way that didn't need to announce itself. A single art piece hung on the wall, abstract and severe. The air smelled clean, faintly of cedar and something mineral. Hyun-woo unlocked the penthouse with a thumbprint and code that he entered without looking. The door opened into a space so high above the city that the Han River looked like a ribbon of dark glass. Zariah stepped inside and stopped. Floor-to-ceiling windows, muted lighting, marble and dark wood. A living area that felt more like a gallery than a home. It was beautiful, and it made her feel small. Hyun-woo removed his coat and draped it over the back of a chair with careful precision. "You can sit," he said. She didn't. "I'm not here to get comfortable." His gaze flicked to her heels. "You're bleeding." Zariah looked down and realized one strap had cut into her heel, leaving a thin line of red. She hadn't even felt it. "Does it matter?" she asked. "Everything matters," he said simply. The way he said it, like a principle, not concern, made her stomach twist. She walked deeper into the room, refusing to be intimidated by the vastness. "You said my father loses everything if I refuse," she said, "but you still haven't explained why you want me." Hyun-woo poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal carafe on the counter. No alcohol, no theatrics. He offered her one. She stared at it a moment, then took it, not because she trusted him, because she would not be controlled by suspicion either. He leaned lightly against the counter, posture relaxed, eyes watchful. "My father is stepping down," he said. Zariah blinked. That's your problem. It becomes yours, he replied, because of the requirement. Her fingers tightened around the glass. What requirement? Hyun-woo's expression did not change, but the air shifted, like he'd finally reached the real reason. To assume leadership, he said, I must present a legal spouse. Zariah stared at him. You're joking. I don't joke. That's ridiculous, she snapped. This is the 21st century. You're telling me a criminal organization has marriage rules? His gaze was steady. A syndicate is not chaos. It is structure, control, perception, alliances. She swallowed hard. And your father decided the best way to prove you're fit to lead is to trap someone in a marriage? To demonstrate stability, Hyun-woo corrected. To prove I can hold power without reckless indulgence. Zariah let out a breath through her nose, incredulous and furious. So you need a wife for optics, for legitimacy, he said, for the council within the organization, for external partners, for the public. She laughed again, but this time it wavered slightly. You don't even know me. I know enough, he said. Her eyes narrowed. Tell me what you think you know. Hyun-woo's gaze moved over her, still not in a leering way, but in the way of someone reading a document. You didn't cry, you didn't beg, you didn't throw a glass. She bristled. Congratulations. I know how to behave in public. You took off the ring, he continued calm. That wasn't shock, that was decision. Zariah's throat tightened. He had seen that clearly. And? She challenged. And I need someone who can survive scrutiny, he said. Someone who won't become a weakness. Zariah stared at him, suddenly aware of how carefully he spoke. Like every word had been weighed. She set the glass down. Let's be clear, she said, voice low and controlled. I'm not a trophy. I'm not a bargaining chip. And I am not collateral, he finished. Her jaw clenched. Yes. Hyun-woo held her gaze. You're correct. The agreement with her should have softened something. It didn't. It sharpened it. Then why am I here? She demanded. He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quieter. Because you were offered, and because I accepted. Heat rose in Zariah's face. You accepted me like an object. I accepted the debt settlement, he said. Not you. Stop splitting hairs. Hyun-woo pushed off the counter and walked toward her. Not fast, not threatening. But every step tightened the air. He stopped close enough that she could smell his cologne. Subtle, expensive, restrained. She refused to step back. Listen carefully, he said. You are not here because I desire to control you. You are here because your fiancé made you an option, and your father signed without understanding the consequences. Zariah's chest hurt. I didn't ask for any of this. I know, Hyun-woo said. The words landed heavier than she expected. Not sympathy, acknowledgement. She fought to keep her voice steady. What are the terms? Hyun-woo turned slightly and gestured toward the far side of the penthouse. A hallway, several doors. This is where you will live, he said. Separate rooms. Her brows lifted. How generous. His gaze held hers. In private, her stomach dipped. In public, he continued, you will be my wife. Zariah swallowed. No sleeping together, she said, as if saying it first would protect her. Not unless you choose it, Hyun-woo replied. The phrase hit her like a quiet blade. Not unless you choose it. Choice. The first time anyone had said the word tonight with any respect. It made her suspicious. And the duration? She asked. 2 years, he said. Her breath caught. 2 years, she repeated, incredulous. You want me to serve as my wife while the succession stabilizes, he said. The requirement is not symbolic. It is contractual within the organization. After 2 years, the marriage can end. Zariah stared at him. You're asking me to give up my life. I'm telling you the only option your fiancé left you, Hyun-woo said. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. You could let my father go, she said. You could decide not to destroy him. Hyun-woo's eyes didn't soften. My father's counsel would interpret mercy as weakness, he said. They'd challenge me before I ever begin. So I'm your shield, Zariah whispered. Hyun-woo held her gaze. You're the proof. Zariah's throat burned. For a moment she imagined walking back into that party and screaming at Min-jae until her voice broke. But it wouldn't matter. The damage was already done. She forced herself to breathe slowly. Expectations, she said, voice tight. Tell me exactly what you expect. Hyun-woo's gaze shifted to the windows, the city spread beneath them like a living organism. You will attend certain events, dinners, public appearances. You will be seen with me. And I smile, she said. I hold your arm. I pretend I'm happy. Yes, he said. The bluntness made her almost dizzy. What happens if I don't? She asked. Hyun-woo looked back at her, his voice remained calm. Your father loses everything. The words were simple, final. Zariah's vision blurred for half a second. She blinked it away. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but steel-edged. Then I have conditions. Hyun-woo's gaze sharpened. Speak. She lifted her chin. 1. My father's assets are protected in writing, immediately, not after I sign anything. Hyun-woo's eyes narrowed slightly, assessing. You're negotiating. I'm surviving, she corrected. Continue. 2. I keep my career, she said. You don't isolate me. I don't become a decorative wife who exists only on your arm. Hyun-woo's gaze lingered on her a beat longer. Agreed, he said. Zariah blinked, thrown off by the ease. 3, she said quickly, not allowing herself to soften. No threats, no intimidation. If you want me to play your wife in public, you treat me like a partner in private. Respect, full information. I'm not walking blind into your world. Hyun-woo's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted again. Respect. That word mattered to him. Agreed, he said, slower this time. Zariah's breath caught. She had expected him to fight her. Instead, he was listening, and that was almost more dangerous. 4, she said, voice quieter now. My body is mine. You will not touch me unless I allow it. Hyun-woo stared at her. The silence stretched long enough for Zariah's heartbeat to grow loud in her ears. Then he nodded once, understood. His gaze held hers with a steady intensity that made her skin feel too tight. And what do you want from me emotionally, she demanded, suddenly furious again. You want me to pretend to love you, smile at you, laugh at your jokes. What happens if I can't do that without hating myself? Hyun-woo stepped closer again, not invading, but close enough that Zariah could feel the heat of him. I don't need your love, he said softly. I need your performance. The honesty should have been insulting. Instead it was clarifying. Zariah's eyes stung. And what do you offer me, she asked, voice low, besides my father's survival? Hyun-woo didn't answer at first. His gaze moved to her face, the tension in her jaw, the stubborn pride keeping her upright. Then he said, quiet and precise, I offer you safety. Zariah laughed bitterly. From you? His eyes narrowed. From everything that comes with this debt, he said. Min-jae involved you with people who don't negotiate like I do. Zariah's stomach dropped. She believed him. Not because she trusted him, because she could feel the truth in the cold certainty of his voice. A pause. Then Hyun-woo turned toward a small side table. He picked up a thin folder, clean, minimal. He held it out. Zariah did not reach for it immediately. What is that? She asked. The marriage agreement, he said, and the protection clause for your father. Her pulse jumped. She took the folder slowly. Her fingers brushed his for half a second. Barely contact, but it was enough. A sharp awareness. Hyun-woo did not react outwardly, but his eyes flicked to her hand. Zariah opened the folder and scanned. She was smart enough to understand most of it quickly. She read the clause about her father. Asset preservation, debt settlement, legal protections. It was real. Her throat tightened. So you planned this, she whispered. I prepare, he said. She looked up, furious again. You prepared my life like paperwork. Hyun-woo's gaze held hers. For me, everything is paperwork, he replied, until it becomes personal. Zariah's breath caught. Is this personal to you? She asked quietly. Hyun-woo's eyes stayed on hers. No, he said. The lie would have been easier. The truth was colder. Zariah closed the folder. Her hands were shaking now, but she refused to let him see fear, only fury. She stepped closer until they were nearly chest to chest. If I agree, she said, voice trembling with controlled anger. You don't get to treat me like silence. I will speak. I will challenge you. I will embarrass you if you try to put me in a cage. Hyun-woo looked down at her, expression unreadable. Then, very quietly, I would expect nothing less. The air between them tightened. A charged beat. His gaze flicked to her lips for the briefest second. So fast she almost convinced herself she imagined it. Almost. Zariah swallowed. I want to call my father, she said. Hyun-woo nodded once. You will. And I want proof he's safe before I sign anything, she added. You'll have it within the hour, he said. She stared at him, searching for any crack, any cruelty, any satisfaction. But Hyun-woo looked burdened, not by her, by the necessity of it all. Zariah's voice lowered. And Min-jae? Hyun-woo's gaze cooled instantly. He no longer matters. Zariah's chest ached. He mattered to her, not as love anymore, but as betrayal. As the man who had looked at her and chosen himself. She forced herself to inhale. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet, steady, and lethal. "Then tell me one more thing," she said. Hyun-woo's gaze stayed fixed. "What?" Zariah lifted her chin. "If I become your wife, what happens the first time your world tries to remind me I'm disposable?" Hyun-woo stared at her a long moment. Then he stepped closer. Close enough that she had to fight the instinct to retreat. But she didn't. His voice dropped, intimate in a way that wasn't tender, but was unmistakably personal. "Then they will learn," he said. "You are not disposable." Zariah's breath caught. A shiver ran through her. Anger and something else, unwilling and unfamiliar. Hyun-woo held her gaze, unblinking. And in that moment she realized the most dangerous part of this agreement wasn't the syndicate. It wasn't the public scrutiny. It was the way he could stand this close to her without touching her, and still make her feel claimed by the air itself. Hyun-woo moved first. He turned away, breaking the tension as if it hadn't existed. "A room is prepared," he said, walking toward the hallway. "You can lock the door." Zariah blinked, thrown again by the subtle consideration. She hated that it mattered. She followed him down the hall. He stopped at a door and opened it. The bedroom was elegant, warm-toned, calmer than the main space. A small, thoughtful touch, a pair of flat slippers placed beside the bed. Her throat tightened. Hyun-woo's gaze flicked to her heel again. "There's a first aid kit in the bathroom," he said. "If you need help, tell my assistant." Zariah stared at him. "You have an assistant for injuries too?" she muttered. A faint pause. Not quite a smile, more like the ghost of amusement. "For everything," Hyun-woo said. He stepped back. "I'll have the documents finalized after your father confirms receipt," he added. "Tomorrow we'll begin the public narrative." Zariah's stomach tightened. "This is the narrative." Hyun-woo looked at her. "People will ask questions," he said. "You will not answer them with anger." Zariah's eyes narrowed. "And you will not answer them with silence." Hyun-woo held her gaze a beat. "Fair." He turned to leave. Zariah's voice stopped him at the threshold. "Hyun-woo." He paused without turning. Zariah swallowed hard, then spoke anyway. "If you ever forget I'm doing this to save my father." Hyun-woo turned his head slightly, looking at her from the corner of his eye. "I won't," he said, quiet and certain. "That's why I accepted your conditions." Zariah's throat tightened. He left. The door clicked shut, and Zariah stood in the middle of a room that was not hers, looking out at a city she loved, realizing her life had become a contract written in someone else's handwriting. But she also realized something else. He had offered her one thing her fiancé never did tonight, a choice inside the cage. Not freedom. Not yet. But space to fight. Zariah exhaled slowly. She walked to the bathroom, removed her heels, and stared at herself in the mirror. Her lipstick was still perfect. Her eyes were not. She leaned closer, whispering to her reflection, "You're not collateral." Her voice steadied. "You're not collateral." And in the silence of the penthouse, with the city glittering below like 1,000 indifferent witnesses, Zariah made her first real decision of the night. She would survive this, and she would not let him forget who she was. The headlines broke before breakfast. Heir to Lee Syndicate announces sudden marriage. Who is Zariah Park? Power alliance or love story? Zariah read them, in silence from the edge of the guest bedroom bed, sunlight spilling in through sheer curtains that felt too soft for a life this sharp. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Friends, colleagues, distant acquaintances pretending concern while fishing for scandal. She turned it face down. Across the hall she heard movement, measured, steady. Hyun-woo. She inhaled slowly. Today was the first test. 3 days later the marriage license had been signed quietly at a private office. No photographers, no spectacle. But tonight would be spectacle. A formal charity gala hosted by one of the country's most influential industrial families, partners closely tied to the syndicate's financial arm. Attendance was not optional. Hyun-woo stood in the living area adjusting the cuff of his dark-tailored suit when Zariah stepped out of her room. He turned and paused. She wore deep emerald silk, understated but luminous. The dress skimmed her figure without being provocative. Her hair fell in soft waves over one shoulder. Gold earrings, no necklace. She looked composed, regal. For half a second, something unreadable flickered in his eyes, then it was gone. "You're on time," he said. She arched a brow. "You thought I wouldn't be?" "I prepared for resistance." She stepped closer, stopping a deliberate arm's length away. "I resist stupidity," she said evenly, "not survival." His gaze held hers. good. The word lingered. A staff member entered quietly, announcing the car was ready. Zariah's pulse ticked faster as they moved toward the elevator together. Before the doors opened, Hyunwoo spoke. "Once we step out," he said calmly, "you stay close." She stiffened. "I can walk beside you without instruction." His gaze slid to hers. That wasn't instruction, it was protection. The elevator doors opened. Cameras flashed the moment they stepped outside. Zariah didn't flinch. Hyunwoo's hand moved to the small of her back, firm, steady, unmistakably possessive. Her breath hitched. It was part of the performance. But the warmth of his palm through silk was not something she had rehearsed. She felt it everywhere. They walked forward. "Chairman Lee," reporters called. "When did you meet? Was this arranged? Is this connected to the succession?" Hyunwoo did not slow. Zariah kept her chin lifted. A reporter pushed closer. "Mrs. Lee, are you happy? Mrs. Lee." The title landed like a new skin she hadn't chosen. Hyunwoo's fingers pressed slightly into her waist, subtle, grounding. Zariah turned toward the cameras. "Yes," she said smoothly, "I am. It wasn't a lie, it wasn't the truth, it was survival." Hyunwoo glanced down at her briefly. Approval. Or surprise. 30 minutes later they entered the venue under crystal chandeliers and the low hum of elite scrutiny. Whispers followed them like perfume. "That's her. She's stunning, she doesn't look intimidated, she should be." Zariah felt the weight of it, but she had spent years navigating rooms like this. Boardrooms, investor dinners, competitive circles where weakness was currency. She slipped her hand lightly through Hyunwoo's arm. A deliberate move. His gaze flicked down, surprised. She leaned slightly closer. "If we're performing," she murmured without looking at him, "we perform properly." Something in his posture shifted. Not dominance. Respect. "Understood," he replied. Inside the ballroom they were approached immediately by an older man with sharp eyes and a controlled smile. Council member Han, one of the internal power figures within the syndicate. Hyunwoo's tone turned formal. "Counselor." Han's gaze moved to Zariah slowly, assessing. "Mrs. Lee," Han said, unexpected. Zariah met his gaze calmly. "I find most important decisions are," she replied gently. Han's mouth curved faintly. "Marriage is not an impulsive decision." "Neither is loyalty," Zariah said. The silence that followed was thin and dangerous. Hyunwoo watched her carefully. Han inclined his head slightly. "We will see," he said before moving away. Zariah exhaled slowly. "Was that a test?" she asked. "Yes," Hyunwoo replied. "And?" His gaze lingered on her. "You passed." A strange warmth spread through her chest. She didn't like that she wanted his approval. The evening continued. Polite smiles, curated introductions, coded conversations. Every time someone's gaze lingered too long, Hyunwoo's hand found her back again. Every time someone implied this was transactional, Zariah responded with poised intelligence. They moved like choreography, unspoken, precise. At one point, a younger executive approached Zariah alone, while Hyunwoo was briefly pulled aside. "I hope you understand what you've married into," he said quietly, condescending. Zariah held his gaze. "I understand more than you think," she replied. "You could still leave," he added. Her jaw tightened. Before she could respond, Hyunwoo appeared beside her. Close, too close. His hand settled firmly at her waist. "My wife isn't leaving," he said calmly. The executive swallowed and excused himself. Zariah's heart was racing. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "Yes," Hyunwoo replied. "I did." His thumb pressed subtly into her hip, not gentle, protective, claiming. Her breath caught. "Remember," he said softly near her ear, "they are watching for weakness." Zariah turned her head slightly. "And are you?" she challenged. His eyes darkened. "Constantly." Later in the evening, they stepped onto a private balcony for air, the music muffled behind glass. The city stretched endlessly below. Zariah finally allowed herself to exhale. "You handled yourself well," Hyunwoo said. "You sound surprised." "I am." She turned to face him fully. "You expected me to fold." "I expected resentment," he said honestly. She laughed once. "You think this isn't resentment?" The wind caught her hair. Hyunwoo stepped closer without thinking, brushing a strand away from her face. His fingers lingered half a second too long. Zariah stilled. The touch was not part of the act. It was instinct. Their eyes met. The world narrowed. "You're good at this," he said quietly. "At pretending. At surviving." Her throat tightened. "Don't mistake composure for consent," she said. "I don't," he replied. The tension between them shifted. Less hostile. More dangerous. Zariah searched his face. For someone who claims he doesn't need love, she said softly, you're very careful. Hyunwoo's jaw flexed. Careful keeps people alive. And what does it cost you? She asked. Silence. He didn't answer. For the first time she saw something behind the control. Loneliness. Brief, hidden quickly, but there. She stepped closer before she could second-guess herself. Not touching, just closing distance. You're not as cold as you pretend, she murmured. His gaze dropped to her lips again. This time she knew she hadn't imagined it. Be careful, he said softly. Of what? Of reading me correctly. Her pulse thundered. Why? Because if you do, he said quietly, this arrangement becomes complicated. The air thickened, the city lights blurred. Zariah became acutely aware of how close they were, how easily he could lean down, how easily she could let him. She swallowed. You said not unless I choose it, she whispered. His eyes darkened. I meant it. The words were steady, but restrained. Zariah felt the shift. Not power, not dominance. Choice. Her choice. And for the first time since the engagement party, she felt something that wasn't obligation. She lifted her hand slowly, placed it against his chest. His heartbeat was controlled, but not slow. Her fingers curled lightly into the fabric of his suit. Then don't pretend you don't feel this, she said. Hyunwoo inhaled sharply. His hand rose, hesitated, then settled at her waist again. Closer now, not for cameras, not for observers, just them. His voice dropped. I didn't expect you, he admitted. It was the most vulnerable thing he'd said yet. Zariah's chest tightened. Neither did I, she whispered. A beat. The tension snapped. He kissed her, not aggressively, not claiming, testing. His lips brushed hers first, tentative, controlled. Zariah froze, then she responded. The kiss deepened slightly, heat beneath restraint, guarded composure fracturing in seconds. His hand tightened at her waist, hers slid to his collar. The world disappeared. Then, Hyunwoo pulled back first, breathing controlled, eyes darker than before. That was a mistake, he said quietly. Zariah's lips tingled. Was it? She asked. Yes, he replied immediately. But he didn't step away, and neither did she. The music swelled faintly inside, reality pressing back in. Hyunwoo exhaled slowly. We go back in, he said. Zariah nodded. He adjusted his expression. So did she. The performance resumed. But something fundamental had shifted. This was no longer only survival. It was no longer only obligation. The first crack in the arrangement had formed, and neither of them knew how wide it would spread. 2 months after the gala, the performance no longer felt rehearsed. It felt lived in. Zariah had learned the rhythm of the penthouse, the way the city shifted color at sunset, the way Hyunwoo preferred silence in the mornings and quiet jazz at night, the way staff moved around him with deference but never familiarity. She kept her career, just as negotiated. She attended meetings during the day, returned to the penthouse in the evenings, and navigated public life as Mrs. Lee with controlled grace. In public, Hyunwoo's hand found the small of her back without thought. In private, they maintained distance, separate rooms, closed doors. Except distance had become increasingly difficult to define. The kiss on the balcony had not been repeated, but it had not been forgotten. The invitation had come from one of the internal council members, a private dinner at an estate outside Seoul, select attendees only. Hyunwoo had read the message once, then twice. You don't trust it, Zariah observed from across the living room. He looked up. No. Then don't go. He held her gaze. If I don't go, it signals fear. She stepped closer, folding her arms. And if you do go, it signals strength. And risk, she added quietly. Hyunwoo didn't deny it. Zariah dressed in understated navy that night, elegant, controlled. Hyunwoo watched her from across the room before they left. You don't have to attend this one, he said. She met his gaze evenly. If this marriage is credibility, she replied, I don't disappear when it's inconvenient. Something moved behind his eyes, not pride, respect. The air around the estate felt wrong the moment they arrived. Too many polite smiles. Too many eyes that lingered too long. Zariah felt it like static against her skin. Hyunwoo's hand stayed firm at her back as they moved through introductions. Counselor Han was present. So were several other figures Zariah recognized only from whispered mentions. Power, old power. The dinner began smoothly. Crystal, wine, soft laughter. But tension simmered beneath the surface. Midway through the second course, one of the senior men, Chairman Du, leaned back in his chair studying Zariah openly. You adjusted quickly, he said. Not everyone thrives under sudden promotion. Zariah smiled politely. I prefer adaptation to regret, she replied. A few quiet chuckles. Chairman Du's eyes sharpened. And do you understand the weight of the name you carry now? Zariah felt Hyun-woo's hand lightly on her leg, grounding. She turned toward Chairman Du calmly. I understand that names gain strength through the people who wear them, she said. The table went quiet. Chairman Du's lips thinned. Bold, he murmured. Hyun-woo's tone was even. My wife doesn't lack confidence. Chairman Du looked at Hyun-woo slowly, and confidence can be misplaced. There it was. Not a threat, but not benign. Zariah felt the shift. This wasn't about her performance. It was about testing Hyun-woo's control. She placed her hand lightly over Hyun-woo's. A subtle signal. I'm fine. But Chairman Du leaned forward slightly. You married quickly, he continued. Some might question whether sentiment has made you vulnerable. Zariah felt Hyun-woo's posture change. The air tightened. Hyun-woo's voice remained calm. Sentiment doesn't influence my decisions. Chairman Du's gaze slid back to Zariah. Then she is merely strategic? Zariah's pulse quickened. This was the edge. Before she could respond, Chairman Du added casually, one hopes she understands her place. The word landed like a slap. Heat rose beneath Zariah's skin. For a moment, Hyun-woo didn't move. Then he set his glass down. The soft click against the table cut through the room. His voice didn't rise. It dropped. Cold. Controlled. Absolute. My wife's place, he said evenly, is wherever she chooses to stand. Silence spread across the table. Chairman Du's expression shifted. You misunderstand. No. Hyun-woo didn't raise his voice. But every eye at the table turned toward him. You misunderstand. The room went completely still. Even the quiet clink of cutlery from other tables seemed to fade. Hyun-woo leaned back slightly in his chair, gaze steady on Chairman Du. And if anyone mistakes her presence for weakness, he said calmly, you are confusing my restraint with permission. The words were quiet, but the warning beneath them was unmistakable. Around the table no one spoke. Heads looked down. The message had already been received. The rest of dinner passed with careful neutrality. But Zariah felt the tension beneath Hyun-woo's composure the entire time, a restrained force held deliberately in place. After dinner, as guests dispersed, Zariah stepped into a side corridor to breathe. Hyun-woo followed a few moments later. You could have handled that politically, she said quietly. I did. No, she whispered. You chose me. The hallway felt too small, too intimate. Hyun-woo's hand slid from her arms to her waist again, closer than before, not protective now, personal. I will not allow anyone, he said softly, to make you feel disposable. Zariah's chest ached. That wasn't the agreement, she murmured. I know. Her eyes searched his. And now? Silence. A long one. Then, his hand lifted to her face, slowly, as if giving her time to stop him. She didn't. His thumb brushed lightly along her cheek, not possessive, reverent. You're no longer in agreement, he said quietly. Her breath trembled. The walls she'd built since the engagement party began to fracture. You're dangerous, she whispered. His lips curved faintly. I've always been. No, she said, shaking her head slightly. Not like this. His gaze dropped to her mouth again. This time he didn't hesitate. He kissed her, not tentative, not testing, certain. The restraint that had defined him cracked. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back slightly as he deepened the kiss. Zariah felt the shift. This wasn't performance, this was choice. Her fingers gripped his jacket, pulling him closer. For a moment, the world shrank to breath and warmth, and the undeniable truth that she wanted this. When he pulled back, his forehead rested lightly against hers, breathing uneven for the first time since she'd met him. I shouldn't have waited, he murmured. Zariah's lips tingled. Waited for what? For it to stop being necessary. Her chest tightened. You're not protecting me because you have to anymore, she said softly. No, he admitted. Silence settled around them, but it wasn't cold. It was charged. Zariah placed her hand over his heart. You don't get to fall first and pretend you didn't, she said. Gently. A rare, almost vulnerable expression crossed his face. And you? He asked. She stepped closer. You stopped being a cage the moment you gave me conditions, she whispered. His hand tightened at her waist. Zariah. She kissed him this time. Not because she needed to, not because the world was watching, because she wanted to. When they separated, the weight between them had changed. No longer contract, no longer obligation. Something chosen. Hyun-woo brushed his thumb across her lower lip gently. We leave, he said softly. She nodded. As they walked back toward the main hall, his hand found hers openly. And for the first time since her engagement party, Zariah didn't feel like collateral. She felt chosen. And, more dangerously, she felt safe. 3 months later, the headlines had shifted. Lee Hyun-woo consolidates power. Syndicate stability confirmed. Mrs. Lee's quiet influence. The scrutiny hadn't disappeared, but it had softened. No one questioned the marriage anymore. They questioned her impact. Zariah stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse one evening, looking out over the Han River, the same view that had once felt like a cage suspended in the sky. Now it felt different, familiar. Behind her, Hyun-woo worked at the long marble table, reviewing documents with controlled precision. He had stepped fully into leadership. The council no longer tested him openly. Chairman Du had withdrawn into polite silence. Strength had been established, stability secured, the requirement had been fulfilled. 2 years, the contract had said, but power moved faster than timelines. Zariah turned slowly. "When does it end?" she asked quietly. Hyun-woo didn't look up immediately. "End? The necessity," she clarified. His pen paused. He set it down carefully and met her gaze. "It doesn't. That's not what I meant." He studied her for a moment, as if recalculating. "The council is satisfied," he said. "My position is secure." She nodded once. "So if I asked for an annulment tomorrow, you wouldn't lose leadership?" Silence stretched. The air thickened. Hyun-woo stood slowly. He didn't rush toward her. He didn't react sharply. He simply crossed the room with deliberate steps and stopped a few feet away. "You want to leave," he said. It wasn't accusation. It was contained tension. Zariah's heart beat harder. "No," the word came quickly, truthfully. "But I need to know," she continued, voice steady but vulnerable, "that if I stay, it's because we chose it." Hyun-woo's jaw tightened slightly. "You think I would keep you because I can?" he asked quietly. She held his gaze. "You could." He stepped closer. "Zariah." Her name and his voice had changed over time, no longer formal, no longer distant. "Personal. If you walk out that door," he said softly, "no one will stop you." Her breath caught. "And my father?" "Protected," he said immediately, "regardless." Her throat tightened. "And the council? They answer to me." The power in that statement was absolute, but there was something else in his eyes now. Something far more dangerous than control. Fear. Not of losing power, of losing her. "You are not collateral," he said quietly. "You haven't been for a long time." Zariah stepped closer until only inches separated them. "Then say it," she whispered. His brows lowered slightly. "Say what? That you don't need this marriage anymore." He inhaled slowly. "I don't need it." The words echoed softly between them. The last chain fell away. Zariah's chest rose and fell. "And if I leave?" she asked again, barely above a whisper. Hyun-woo didn't hesitate this time. "I lose something I didn't expect to want." Her heart stuttered. "Which is?" "You." Zariah's composure trembled for the first time since the engagement party months ago. "You weren't supposed to matter," he continued quietly. "This was structure, optics, a solution." She smiled faintly. "I know." His hand rose slowly, brushing her hair back from her face, a gesture he no longer thought about. "You became unavoidable." Her throat tightened. "And that scares you," she said gently. He didn't deny it. "I've built my life on control," he admitted. "On anticipating threats, on eliminating variables." "And I'm a variable," she whispered. "You're the only one I can't calculate." The honesty struck deeper than any grand declaration. Zariah lifted her hand and placed it against his chest, over his heartbeat, steady, strong, but not untouched. "I didn't fall for the air," she said softly, "or the power." His eyes searched hers. "I fell for the man who stood in front of a room full of predators and told them I wasn't disposable." His jaw flexed. "That wasn't strategy," he admitted. "I know." Her voice trembled slightly. "And I didn't stay because I had to," she continued. "I stayed because you gave me space to choose." Hyun-woo's hand slid to her waist. "Zariah," he said quietly, "if you stay now, it won't be temporary." Her pulse quickened. "Good." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "You're certain?" he asked. She nodded. "I don't want an exit plan," she said. "I want a future." The word hung in the air. Hyun-woo stepped fully into her space. His hands framed her face. "You deserve to choose me," he said quietly, "not be assigned to me." She smiled softly. "Then I choose you." The shift was immediate. He kissed her. Slow, deep, deliberate. A kiss that acknowledged months of tension, of proximity, of resisting what had already grown between them. Zariah's fingers slid into his hair, pulling him closer. His hands tightened at her waist, lifting her slightly as he deepened the kiss, not possessive, not overwhelming. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, his forehead rested against hers. "No more separate rooms," he murmured. Her heart fluttered. "That wasn't in the original contract," she teased softly. "The contract is void," she smiled. "Good." His thumb traced along her jawline, slower now, reverent. "You changed the terms," he said quietly. "No," she replied gently. "We did." The city lights flickered below them, indifferent to the quiet revolution happening in the penthouse above. Zariah stepped back only enough to look at him fully. "The first night," she said softly, "I thought you were the cage." His expression shifted. "And now?" She reached for his hand and intertwined their fingers. "Now I know you were the door." For a moment, something in his eyes broke open. Not weakness, relief. He pulled her back into him, holding her firmly. Not as collateral, not as proof, as partner, as equal, as the one person who had stepped into his world and refused to be diminished by it. "Mrs. Lee," he said quietly against her hair. She tilted her head back. "Yes? I'm glad you didn't walk away." Zariah smiled softly. "So am I." Outside, the Han River shimmered beneath the night sky. Inside, a marriage that had begun as obligations settled into something chosen. And for the first time since the engagement party that shattered her life, Zariah did not feel humiliated. She did not feel trapped. She did not feel leveraged. She felt loved. This is where our story ends. Thank you for listening to Neon Obsidian, where romance and danger often walk hand in hand. If you enjoy stories like this, I hope you'll return for the next